Hello and welcome to the Cabin Boy and its Woolcast, coming to you deep from the Canadian forest.
Bonjour mes amis, this is Christopher.
And this is the other guy,
Jamie.
Spring is finally here and the warm weather is here and we have a lot to catch up on. We're going to talk about Knit the Rainbow and Jacob Sheep.
We're going to talk about Wips and Fobs and Dandelion Jelly.
And what's in my dye pot.
And there's also Victoria Day or Journée des Patriotes.
So grab your favorite drink, sit back, and we'll tell you our stories. Spring is sprung, the grass is riz, I wonder where the birdies is. My cousin used to say that all the time when I was a little kid, so it's stuck in my brain.
It's very appropriate because, yeah, birds, they start at what? 4:30, 4 a.m. As soon as it's not even light yet, and then you could just hear this cacophony, is that sound? Or symphony of sounds of birds and different song. It's actually... Well,
I like it. I mean, I don't love waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but we don't need an alarm clock.
No, I have gone to the window and kind of like knocked or tapped just to shoot if there's one nearby, because it's so quiet out here. You could imagine in the woods, everything's amplified. So it is gorgeous. And then there's flowers everywhere. There's
flowers everywhere, and when the window's up and the screens or the windows are open, the breeze and the smell of the lilacs comes in. It's so nice.
As of now, because the lilacs right here, I mean, the scent is just... Yeah. And that's the most blossoms we've ever had on the lilac trees this year.
Which is great. Do you know what that means?
No.
Great for dyeing.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to get into some kind of tradition or something.
No.
Some story here.
No, we had a story last year.
We did. We had special guests. We talked about lilacs.
Yes.
And I mean, and then when we were on our walks as well, the columbines, which I've never seen local wild columbines, and there was several patches along the trail that were just these big bright sparks of orange and red.
And what did we see 2 weeks ago when we were on our walk with Geneva and Devon?
2 weeks ago.
We saw trilliums everywhere.
Oh,
we have them all over the property right now. They're gorgeous. But we also saw them when we were on our walk. They were throughout the park.
And somebody else mentioned the trillium because they had posted a Facebook a picture. And I did not see red ones ever. I never noticed them or saw a red trillium.
Really?
And so, yeah, remember? And then when we were walking, they were everywhere. And once I spotted them, they were still fewer red than the white. The white are everywhere. The red are a little more scarce, I would say. They're beautiful. Yeah. Amazing. And then there's striped ones too, apparently, or
there were
colored
pink ones as well.
Well, that's as they start to fade.
And we had Morels and Fiddleheads. So I love springtime. There's just so many great things. But I always think about Morels and Fiddleheads as a spring.
Fiddleheads are sort of like, they look like these little curled, what do you call it, like little pinwheels that unfurl into, are they the ferns eventually?
Yes.
Yeah, unbelievable. And so they're very tasty, kind of like something between, what we'd say, like a cabbage and an asparagus or something.
I wouldn't put cabbage in there. Maybe like spinachy or something.
Yeah, spinach, asparagus-like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the morels, for those who don't know, mushrooms. They're delicious. They're so flavorful.
They kind of taste like between a steak and a mushroom. Like
that's what they say.
They're really good.
They're very meaty.
Yeah, so I love those.
And the birds?
The birds are everywhere.
Gosh. Do you remember the orioles? We saw about half a dozen of them. They were always in that same sort of along the path in those trees, those really high trees. You could hear them before you see them, and they're also quite rare. And when you see them fly, the bright orange and yellow colors of them, they're beautiful.
And so what other bird did we see?
Cardinals.
Yep. And what else?
Well,
Do you remember the drama on our walk?
Yeah, I wasn't there.
Oh yeah, you were there. You saw the
part of the drama whatsoever, but I heard all about it.
This was crazy. We were walking along a path, and we walked past basically a wetland, and there was a mother and father goose, Canadian goose there, Canada goose, and goslings. And the dog went crazy and jumped into the water and started swimming towards the goslings. And I was yelling, and Geneva was yelling, and Devin, and we were trying to get the dog back. We finally got the dog back, but the parents, the geese, were going crazy, and I was worried they were going to attack Zan. I was more worried that Zan was going to eat the goslings.
They're very protective, and these things are like quack, 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 and their wings are flapping, and they've got wings like this, and the poor little I want to say ducklings, but they're goslings. They're just trying to follow along and paddle along, and they're dunking into the water.
Yeah, they were smart. They knew
several of them. Yeah, they knew to dunk into the water.
Yeah,
but half of it was swamp, and so the dog was. I show up, and with the dog, they show up back from the walk, and I'm thinking, what is going on with the dog? The dog had black leg warmers on here, all the way up to his chest.
It was black mud all the way down.
Gosh.
Oh my gosh,
it was hysterical.
Yeah, it was quite funny.
Luckily, he didn't get any of the birds. Yeah, and the birds, and he didn't get attacked by the
And then yesterday we were on our way back from a walk, and we happened upon a cow walking down the road.
Yeah,
on its own.
You're in the country when it's like, what's that in the middle of the road?
Well, we thought it was
a bear.
We thought it was a baby. Well, we thought it was a baby moose at the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, well, yes, I did say I think it's a moose because it was way too large to be a deer because the deer are smaller, moose are large. And I thought, is that a moose? And then for a second I thought bear because it was black. As we approached, it got more black, and I thought, is that a bear? Because there are bears who make their way down from North Madoc, the town a little north of here, down through the woodlots, and they have been in the area.
Yeah.
And so I thought, is that a bear? And it's like, oh, it's just a cow, just taking a promenade along the dirt road.
Yeah.
Obviously, it escaped from its compound.
Yeah, I think we found the right farm, though. I think we figured it out and contacted the farm.
We backtracked up the hill, and sure enough, there were cows in the field, and there were black ones. So and it was a little bit of a younger cow.
Yeah,
and it followed us. Remember, we tried to pull away, and it came right at.
I know.
We were in a car. Came right at the car, and then it was like right there beside the window, and I'm thinking, okay, it wanted to follow us back, but we didn't know where.
And Zan was going crazy in the back.
Of course. So yeah, wild country cows.
Yeah. So we've been doing a lot lately, and we need to catch everybody up on what's been going on. If you haven't watched our last interview with Sylvia Olsen, we had so much fun doing that, and it's actually our most popular episode now ever.
Yeah, which is great,
and it is terrific.
In the short period of time that it's run, just over a week, it's ahead of any other one we've done.
Yeah,
and I mean she's a fascinating topic, so I am still somewhat surprised in the numbers, but not so much in what she represents.
Well, what really makes me happy is I think she's got such an important story to tell, and it's just I'm so happy that so many people have listened to it.
Absolutely,
and even more people are going to listen to it because she just did an interview with the CBC. Canadian Broadcasting Company, and it's a podcast called North by Northwest, and that will be aired shortly. And she said that the CBC is going to put a link to our interview,
that's pretty amazing.
I know, I've never heard of that before. So from the CBC. So
the CBC's, as I mentioned, it's like our National Broadcasting Corporation. So that's pretty exciting. But good for Sylvia. I mean, I'm so happy that she's getting all of this attention. She's got a lot of views for her. I mean, it's her episode. It's a win-win for both of us. But it's very exciting for her.
It is, and I'm definitely going to reciprocate. So I'll put a link to that interview, the CBC interview, on this as soon as we have it. Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing that as well, because it'll be interesting what else she has to add to the story.
Yeah. So the other thing that I did a couple more things.
What'd you do? Was I there?
You weren't here for this one, but I participated in a career day, and it was so much fun. Nicole Battle had asked, she put it basically a call out in the Insta world. And so I immediately got back to her and said, I would love to participate in career day, because remember when we were at the local school, and we did natural dyeing with I think it was kindergarten.
Gosh, this cutest little children. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. They asked the best questions as well. So I said,
very candid.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to participate in this. And this is Brownsville Ascend Middle School. So I want to do a shout out to that school. It was fantastic. And where are they? They are in Brooklyn, New York. And they asked the best questions. Like my jaw dropped in a couple of them. I was just thought, oh my gosh, they were such intelligent questions. And I don't get questions like this when I teach adults necessarily. Well, so I thought it was.
I'm not going to say a thing.
And I didn't mean to look at you when I said that.
No, I think it's that maybe children are so much more curious than adults. Adults maybe have done this before. Nothing excites them as much as, children, everything excites them. So this is new and this is fascinating and they're curious. So they're very animated.
So I talked about...
kind of like me.
Kind of like you. More restrained, though. So it was basically... I was talking about foraging and natural dyeing. And that was the purpose of the conversation. But I did talk about when we forage in the wintertime. And when I say we, it's just Zan and myself. Because you're sometimes not with us. I don't know where you are. You're probably in the kitchen.
I don't forage in the winter. I just
you're washing wool.
I just stay cooped up in the warm cabin by the fire.
Right. Knitting. Yeah.
Knitting. I'd have no.
So, and one of the stories I shared was when we go into the forest, for a number of times that we were foraging, there was a murder of crows following us.
Murder.
Following us around from tree to tree to tree. And they would join us and then follow us to the end, and then we'd turn around and come back. And you can walk in the forest for hours. And they would follow us. And it was really, it felt like somebody was protecting us. It was such a wonderful feeling. And they're very noisy through the whole thing as well. And so I shared that story. And then the next day, one of the little girls in the class told her teacher that she wants to move up to live beside us and go on foraging treks with us in the forest. So that was the ultimate compliment. It was so wonderful.
That was funny. I didn't know it was called a murder of...
What did you think it was?
Well, I don't know, a flock of...
That's a flock of seagulls.
That's a flock of seagulls. That's different. That's a band. I know them. That's a band.
Didn't you have hair like the flock of seagulls once?
I think I still do.
Well, some days it depends.
And there was more to that story of the you learned a lot from these crows.
For sure.
They send messages.
They send messages. Sure, if they see danger, or if they see a fox.
There's a reason for And
yes.
they gather and they swoop and they swarm and they're giving you their messages to each other.
And I was nervous a little bit when I did hear them calling out when one of them would call out, because oftentimes it's a predator in the area. But they do this a lot too. They will swarm owls, and we have owls. I've mentioned this before. We've got so many owls in our forest, so that's probably the main reason why they're making that noise.
And I could see how, when you're telling these stories, how these children would be fascinated by your stories, because I mean, you think Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
Some of them may have never even had the opportunity to visit, to be in the countryside.
Yeah.
So they'd be thinking, what? Where do you live? Animals, crows.
Yeah.
And foraging. What do you mean foraging for?
It made me think of a conversation I had with a designer in New York.
Really?
Yeah.
Poor thing. She's never been anywhere either.
Oh my gosh, that is so sexist.
I know. I just said, we'll be touching on that subject momentarily.
In a minute. Yeah, you're jumping ahead.
Oh my gosh.
Cairo. I was talking to Cairo. You met Cairo the last time we were in
I met him.
New York.
I met him.
And I was talking about apple trees. And he said, "What are you talking about? Apples come from a grocery store."
He did not.
Yes, he did. Because I've encouraged Cairo to come and visit us.
That's like my sister's like, I'm like, she won't eat chicken because she'll eat a chicken breast because that's just chicken from the grocery store. But if it has bones, it's actually a bird that used to have feathers. So I get it.
Wow,
it's true.
So the other topic that I wanted to share with everyone was the experience I had with Knit the Rainbow last Friday. Okay. It was fantastic. So Austin Rivers contacted me, and he founded Knit the Rainbow in 2020. And it's an organization that really focuses on the LGBTQ plus youth in New York. And this is centered in Brooklyn as well.
Oh, okay.
And what they do is their mandate is really to provide garments, wool garments to the homeless, LGBTQ plus homeless. And there's over 500,000 LGBTQ plus homeless in the United States.
Is that just youth or just in general?
Youth.
Youth.
40%. 40. Sorry, it's LGBTQ plus youth.
Youth. Okay.
And 40% of all youth are LGBTQ plus. So when you take that percentage, 40%, it's much higher than the national average of LGBTQ plus people. So, so think about that. So in New York, there are 8,000 homeless LGBTQ plus people or youths.
So roughly, that's like a.
So 8,000, and then of that, there are only 375 beds.
Oh, geez.
So think about what that's like.
These are real numbers.
Yeah, so think about in the wintertime what that looks like. So he thought, you know, one way we can help is to knit garments and crochet garments. And so they've got people from all over, a number of countries participating in it and providing, I think they gave over 1,000 out last year. And so, and that's the purpose of it. So they have garments. They also, I'm going to put a link to this so the viewers can go to Knit the Rainbow. But they also have patterns as well. So they provide that designers will give patterns or provide patterns.
That's really good.
Oh yeah, and then they do outreach and educational sessions, and that leads me to the panel session that I participated in.
Oh, okay.
That's where this story was going.
Oh, okay. I see the connection now.
Yes. So Austin reached out and said, "Would you like to participate in a panel discussion?" And it is on crafting beyond gender. And so I said, that's a very interesting topic. I did my research on Knit the Rainbow and recognized some familiar faces, read their mission statement, and thought, I am all in on this one. And I had no idea who was going to be on the panel. And I said, I'm definitely going to participate in this. And then I saw the panelists, and I was even more excited about it. Xandy Peters, designer, fantastic designer, it was there. Juanito is there, fantastic crocheter. And Gregory Stitch, who I haven't seen since New York, I guess 2 years ago now.
Okay.
And Lewis, Brooklyn Boy Knits.
Okay.
He was facilitating. So it was.
Is that everyone?
And Zoe Desborough, and she owns Boutique Crochet & Co.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know a couple of these people.
Yes.
Yes.
So it was I think a great diversity of people on the panel, and it was a wonderful discussion. And we were there for an hour and a half, talking about this for an hour and a half, and I think it could have easily gone on for a couple of hours, because we just were able to talk about certain things, but this topic, crafting beyond gender, you can talk for forever.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you have all these, already on the panel. So that's what, 6 or 7 on the panel, and each one has their own very own personal story. They have their own beliefs, their own opinions, their as well as the way they themselves identify.
Yeah.
So each one of them has, I'm sure, a lot to say and a lot to share.
Yeah.
And a lot to, and it's educational as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point, is to put it out there, so, educate, I would think.
Right.
And for a common purpose, which behind it all is Knit the Rainbow.
Yeah. And there were 80 people roughly, approximately 80 people that were tuned into it in Zealandia.
Like participants, kind of?
Listening to the panel discussion. And so they've also recorded it. So if you want to listen to it, it's available on their website to listen to. I think it's on their website or on their Instagram, but I'll put a connection to
some of these people did participate in the end, though, didn't they not?
Yeah, there was Q&As at the end of it. So they got to ask a lot of questions. Well, we had some time to answer some of the questions, but again, there was just so many things that we could have talked about. One thing we didn't talk about, though, I mentioned that Xandy Peters talked a little bit about it, but was just the history of men in the knit world, because and that was something that I was going to talk about, but we didn't have time. Just you go all the way back to 200 AD. 200
AD?
Yeah.
And, did you know then?
So you would get, at that time, we believe that Arabian men started knitting out of really trying to catch more fish. And, rather than catching one fish at a time, expanding it, making a net, and catching others. And then textiles grew from that.
So knotting together, creating nets.
Yeah, and then textiles grew from that. And then what happened was during the period after that, in Europe, it just exploded. And so when I say exploded, it exploded with men only. So men would see that there's value in creating these textiles. And so the kings and queens and the aristocracy said, we want this. And so they were looking at, just like you think about a blacksmith. A blacksmith is a trade.
Yes.
Well, this was very similar to that. And so what happened was...
Could you say blacksmith today?
Yeah. And so what happened was guilds were formed, and then the guilds would basically take men in and say, we're going to train you on becoming a knitter, and so you're going to go through a 6-year apprentice.
6 years to be a knitter?
Yeah, apprenticeship. The apprentice. And then, so for 3 years you're learning in-house, and then they ship you off, and you learn from other countries, and then come back and bring out your skills, and then take an exam. And the exam is knitting some garments and knitting a carpet. And then they look at that and determine whether or not you're going to get you're going to become a knitter. So that happened.
So like you say, like a lot of the during those times, like tailors, not just tailors, but anybody who was made like a shoemaker or a hat maker or what have you, they were all originally men, and they were apprenticeships. And if you were lucky enough that mostly it was from father to son that were then educated and trained, and then if you were hired by noble, like you say, they're aristocracy or noblemen, and you apprenticed, and it was a career.
That was the ultimate gig. So you were hoping
but knitting was part of that as well, which we would never think.
Yeah, so you were hoping to, when you passed your exam, that a wealthy family would hire you, or king and queen, and you'd become their garment maker or their knitter. And and then what happened was the invention of the knitting machine, the Industrial Revolution that came through and basically said, we don't need these dudes to be knitting anymore because we can create much more. So that profession died.
Okay.
And knitting was more accessible to more people now in homes, but also they were able to mass produce. And it wasn't until the World War I and World War II that males were brought back into the knitting group because they wanted to knit garments for the troops. Yes. And so schools would teach knitting, and boys and girls would be knitting, and so that's where the
support the cause.
Yeah, and then after the war again, the guys took off, and women were knitting. Isn't really until recently that, and I'm talking from a European perspective, Canadian perspective. It wasn't until then that the guys recently came back and started knitting. It's interesting to talk to guys though about coming out as a knitter, and coming out as a knitter meaning knitting in public. And then there's Lewis, who is Brooklyn Boy Knits, and who was photographed on the subway, and that picture went viral because he's a very masculine presenting guy who's knitting, and that's something you don't see every day. That definitely, I think, also helped people, especially guys, come out as knitters in public. Because if this guy can do it, why can't I do it?
And I could imagine he's getting a lot of looks on the subway. People
for sure,
just looking at this guy knitting on, I mean, there'd be dozens and dozens of people on the subway kind of going, oh. Yeah.
But I see more and more, like when we're at the airport and stuff like that, you'll see more people knitting.
Yeah, and in the past with my old job in Toronto, there was one guy who was always knitting on TV sets or on the set of he'd be sitting back there knitting, and everybody going, what are you doing? And I thought it was even unusual. I'm talking 15 years ago. And he was a knitter. And people thought, what are you doing knitting? And it was his thing. Yeah.
So those were really exciting. It was really fun to participate on that panel. And I'll put a link to all of that.
So how did it end? So what was the overall outcome of the discussion then?
Well, there was no conclusion. We just talked about a bunch of things. Like I talked about stigma, and I talked about how it impacts art. Someone asked a great question about how do you distinguish between craft and art, and what role does gender play in that. So a lot of really interesting topics.
Yeah. So now what are we going to talk about?
I think we're talking about whips and fobs. So,
a whip. I know what that is, but do I have one? Yes, I do.
You do. You've got a KAL.
A
KAL whip.
And what do you got?
Well, I'll show you. Show me yours, and I'll show you mine.
You go first. You go first.
Well, it's your KAL though.
KAL. Oh, my knit along. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, aren't we? Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Ooh, I don't know if you remember. I remember because when I pulled this out the last time, it was like this big. It was just basically a neck. So, this is where we're at now. If I could just
You made some progress
down.
for sure.
Let's see, why don't you hold a corner?
Sure.
Because I want to pull this down so you can really see the length on it. There you have it. So, I'm about, I don't know, halfway. It's coming along nicely. I'm really impressed by it. I finally added my little pink stripe here. And it goes to about below my chest, to about here. Well, you can see where it goes.
Yeah,
so,
it goes to about here.
Oh shoot, it's longer than I thought. Because I'm, well no, I've been trying to keep track and I measured this to be maybe 6.5 inches because I'm going to tie in the blue on, after the gray down here, I'm going to tie in this blue and finish off with the cream. And same with the sleeves will be blue and then cream.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm very excited. I actually feel like it's a sweater. I've tried it on several times.
I think it looks amazing.
I mean,
I think it looks really nice.
I feel like leaving it like this for now because it makes a beautiful crop top and it's perfect for the weather.
But you need to have short shorts with it as well.
Oh, I don't know. Do you do short shorts?
That's all you own, isn't it?
So that's my KAL. And are we going to pick a date? We're going to pick a date for the next knit along because I think people are going to be way ahead of me, but there's still people who won't be completely finished. Some may be. I'm behind because your knit along KAL.
Yeah,
knit along sweater. He's been putting his on hold for a couple of weeks because
so the body's done.
You're done. You're done.
And I found an owner for this as well.
Oh gosh. I thought I was going to be the new owner.
No,
because you know we talked about on our last knit along we had some great conversation, but we also had a very good discussion about patterns and sizing and stitch numbers and all of that. It was fascinating. I learned quite a few things from some of our knit along friends, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for following along and also for instructing me.
Yes.
because you found someone for your sweater.
I did.
I thought that one's going to fit me just right.
Yeah.
I increased mine after I did which I started up here. The counts are the same on both sizes, but I went up a size, and that's what there was a big discussion about it on our last knit along.
Yes.
Which was fascinating. But all I did was, because this was the same count, but when I came to the increase and to finish the sleeves, I increased to one size up.
Right.
And I'm glad I did because I've tried this on and it's going to fit perfectly.
So let's talk about the recipient of my sweater.
So Christopher's sweater, now that he's done his full body, it fits me because it's the same size, but
however, my son was over on the weekend and my son is very particular about what he will wear and not wear. And so I was super excited when he said he would wear that sweater.
He loved it.
And I said, Devin, don't just say that because I'm standing here in front of you. Are you really going to wear it? And he said, yes, I love it. It looks vintage. Yeah. It looks vintage.
It looks very vintage, very masculine. And there we go with that again. Very sporty.
So that's what he liked about it. It was sporty looking.
And it fit him better than
like a glove.
Yeah, it fit him like perfectly. He loved it and it looked really good on him. So it's nice. It's nice that you could, I mean, now he'll have a brand new beautiful sweater knitted by his dad.
Yep. And I'm excited. I'm super excited.
And I'm going to have a brand new knitted sweater knitted by me.
That's right.
Because I thought, because we talked about this, and I said that if I increase this size and it turns out that it's, you know, a little bit, because you're just slightly, because I'm like, basically like jacket size, I'd be like a 40 and you're a 42. So you're a little wider. So I thought, if anything, if it's a little bit big, maybe Christopher would have a new sweater. But that chance, because I'll grow
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. You'll eat even more donuts to
he'll never wear pink.
That's not true.
I know, he got dead in pink.
That is so not true. That's so not true.
So I'm very happy about how the progress is going. And we are going to have another knit along, so stay tuned because we will post a date, probably here. We'll choose one. It's going to be next weekend, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it will be for sure.
So
yeah,
we hope to see everyone at least one more time to see where everybody's progress is.
I'm feeling we're going to have two. So we're going to have the last progress one and then the finale where we'll all wear our sweaters.
Yeah, because, well, I'm thinking some will be done. I kind of feel like the majority might be close to done, maybe. But
well, we'll find out. We'll put our feelers out.
Yeah, and I'm going to be behind. And there's also we have our other new friend Miguel, who it was his time knitting a sweater as well.
Yes,
so, but but on the knit along he was already ahead of me. So we'll see. We'll do one and see how it goes, and then have a finale, and everybody could pull out their sweaters and their final product, and we could have like a parade and a little fashion show.
I was also, I just want to let you know, I've been very impressed with your ability to focus on this sweater. Because you wake up in the morning and you focus in your knitting and you're staying there knitting. Like you're not doing 5 things at once, which
because usually I'm just scatterbrained and I have zero focus and zero self-discipline. So yeah.
No, I always use the example of you going to get the groceries out of the car. So you walk from the house to get the groceries out of the car, and on the way you will start raking leaves and fixing light bulbs and looking at what needs to be trimmed on the bushes. Well, so it's...
And the last time I did leave a bag of groceries in the car, I'm like, hey, I thought I bought some milk and ice cream, and it's like, where's that stuff? Thank goodness this is winter time because it stayed cold in the car.
Yeah.
No, I didn't buy ice cream, sorry.
So I have another whip. I have another whip.
He has another whip. I don't. See, I was so focused that is my focus, is my one work in progress. Wow. And what do we have here?
This is a cactus. And so I'm knitting a few cacti,
I think.
And this one is by Lucy Randall, and it's called Woolly Cacti, and it's a free pattern. So I will put a link onto that. But I really like the way it's turned out. I'm going to do different shapes, great. And she has different shapes as well.
And I said I would knit one as well, but I'm going to add some spikes to mine, and I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm going to knit some prickly little things because I like mine a little prickly.
Well, you know what would be a good idea is to put T-pins, or you could put pins in that could be reusable for knitting. So when you're blocking, for example, T-pins,
that's a good idea.
Could use, this could be your T-pin holder.
You could put, that's a great idea, because you could stick them in there and that'll look like the prickly little needles, but they're actually useful needles.
Yeah.
And I might put a little flower on top just to make it a little more, so I'm going to probably do one too.
Yeah. And so it's a lot of fun, and it's simple. I did this when we were watching a TV show, and it didn't take very long.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. So that is my whip. Now I have a finished object.
Another finished object. I don't have a finished object.
So close your eyes, and put your hands out.
How did you finish an object? What kind of object?
Close your eyes. Are your eyes closed?
Yes.
Okay.
What is it? What is that? What is it? Can I open my eyes?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can open your eyes.
Is it a flower? Is it a flower or a donut? Oh, yes.
And you said I've never knit anything for you before, so.
Oh. I'm speechless. That doesn't happen ever.
Hold on. If I only knew it was that easy to make it speechless.
That or shove a donut in my mouth. These are beautiful. Well, I did mention, because you've knitted yourself about 5 pairs of socks. Am I blushing? I'm like all flustered now. You've knitted yourself several pairs of socks. And these are beautiful. I love the blue because it's my favorite color. And these beautiful pinks and yellows and purples, and oh, they're fantastic.
And so they came out of one of the go-tos for me, Saltwater Gifts. They're Vamps. So it's the Vamp pattern.
The Vamps pattern.
Yeah.
And if I was ever lost in the woods and I had 2 pairs of socks on, they could double as a pair of mitts.
That's true. Well, there's a lot of similarity in mitts and socks. So well, yeah, I borrowed from the Saltwater Classics book and improvised a little bit, but there you go.
They're fantastic. Beautiful, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to save these. They're going to keep my feet warm next winter.
Yeah.
Thanks so
To be
much.
great. Oh, you don't wear Birkenstocks. I was going to say Birkenstock socks.
That's your look. Socks and Birkenstocks. We're not going there. So now, okay, so that's our whips and our fobs. And
okay, that leads me to
everything?
Well, can you bring the socks back?
We forgot something. What? What about?
Well, I want to talk about something, and it's what's in my dye pot.
Okay, and how does that relate to these?
So if you hold up your sock, I just want to talk about what I used for the dye colors.
Okay.
I used indigo, which is the blue.
Blue.
Cannabis.
Which is yellowish.
Yeah.
And maybe a blend with the blue.
Mugwort, which is brought a yellowish green color, and Brazil wood.
Okay. Well, I could see all of those colors. This is slightly some of the colors are slightly darker in this Jacob wool. As what did you say this was again?
BFL. Blue-faced Leicester.
Beautiful freaking Leicester. That's what it
Beautiful
is.
freaking Leicester. Yeah,
that's what it is. I love it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to show you how it took the color.
Oh, and it's amazing. You know, what I love about when you do these multicolors, Christopher, is they create their own patterns, but everybody knows that. But everybody, the first thing when they see something like this, they say, but how does that knit up? But if you've seen it once,
which is a good question.
It's just a great question. It's, you know, they want to know. But you know what? They pretty much knit up the same. And I've mentioned it before. There is a bit of a pattern in here because if you've dipped a quarter of it or 1/8 or half in the other half, well, that color is going to repeat itself 2, 3, 4 times, as you can clearly see here. So you have a pattern. It starts here, and then you went into the blue. It's recreated. You can see the recreation of the color each time you've gone around the full length of the one dye section, let's say. So it's fantastic.
And then this one is indigo and the Brazil wood. So I just did that. So
that one's you could see the difference there. That's wonderful as well. I love the blue in here.
Okay, so I want to talk about this now.
Which is?
Do you remember where this came from?
No.
Do you remember we were talking about a wonderful dye, indie dyers from the UK? Riverknits.
Riverboat? Is there a riverboat involved?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
I thought you were changing the name.
No, I clearly know. It's like, okay, a UK dyer. Oh, is there only one or two? I don't know. Tell me more about the UK dyer. I mean, there are many. So,
Becky and Marcus.
Yeah. How can I forget them? And of course, that's why I said the riverboat, because the riverboat is, a big part of their lifestyle.
Yes.
It's incredible.
So we were talking about them because we discovered them in a festival.
Yeah.
And then they did a rebuttal, or almost they created a YouTube episode and responded to some of our questions, which was great. And then they added on.
So it wasn't a rebuttal; it was they answered to our once we mentioned.
Well, I had questions, I guess. Yeah. So they provided a response to the questions.
Yes.
And so they also added a piece to show what it was like to be on a riverboat, which I thought was pretty cool, because we had no idea.
Yeah, they answered your question they created a little episode just based on Cabin Boy Knits and talking to us. So they talked to us and their audience at large, but through this wool and questions and answers.
They threw in a challenge.
They did?
They did. So they said, we know that you love Jacob sheep, and we wanted to give you some Jacob sheep so that you can dye with it.
And that was a surprise, wasn't it?
That was a surprise. So I received 2 dark shades of Jacob sheep, and these were lighter. These were just off-white. And so that's what I came up with. So I wanted to show, I wanted to do that, and I really liked them. It's got so much character to it.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about Jacob sheep?
I know a little about Jacob sheep.
Hold on, I'm shocked.
Just a little bit, because there's not a whole lot of history. There's a history there, but it's not a very well defined history. It's sort of a little bit legend, a little bit possibly from here, possibly from there. And the reason you mentioned Jacob is because we talk often about how you like rare breeds and maybe endangered breeds or little known breeds that people don't know. And this is one of them.
And I like to figure out also what to do with their wool, because it definitely feels different. The micron count is different on Jacob sheep, and so it's a higher micron count, and so people wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards it. But there's all kinds of great things you can do with this wool.
Yeah, And it's more like, what do you call it? Like a medium. Like when you feel it like this, you feel the texture, but you feel there is a softness, and there's also a lot of texture to it.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, I mean, it has a nice luster to it, as well. Not as much as some, but as you say, it's they breed the sheep for the fleece, as do any sheep, most sheep. And this is a dual purpose sheep, so they do breed it for its fiber and also for its meat.
I think there's a third reason as well.
There is a third reason. What, their hides? They're tanning the
no,
they tan
okay,
the hides as well.
I think some of them have it as for entertainment because they're so
entertainment.
They're
in the circus, folks. What? Well, there is a part of the history.
No, there is. There's the history, but also they're so unique looking with their horns.
Absolutely.
So I think some farms have one or two of them for that purpose.
This is true because if you look at the history of the Jacob sheep, they're said to be descendants of possibly, or likelihood of descendants from domesticated sheep that Norsemen from Scandinavia would have brought to the British Isles on their travels across the seas. They were looking to establish colonies and farm some new lands, and they brought with them their sheep. And then, you know, when they've moved on to greener pastures, no pun intended or cliche, but they would have left behind, some of those sheep stayed behind on the British Isles, and so they're descendants of those sheep, or the Jacob sheep.
Right.
There's also legend that says perhaps it's from, in the story of Jacob in the Old Testament, where, you know, one of the sheep was this spotted sheep amongst the flock and thought, ooh, wow, and bred them, and they're the descendants of the original Jacob sheep from the Bible story.
Oh my gosh, you just ticked off all the boxes. I was about to ask you what's the biblical reference.
And
you got it.
This one has a little more, you have a little more, you have a lot more. I mean, I grew up Catholic, but you've partaken in the church more than I have.
In my younger years.
Not so long ago, years either. So into your adulthood, really. So that's why I know that you would bring up the biblical story. And the other legend has it, legend or story or theory, perhaps, let's just say, is that in the 16th century, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, when there were the Spanish Armada, you know, the attempted invasions, that some of the shipwrecks off the coast of Ireland, you know, the sheep made their way ashore, and they're descendants from these sheep. And that was also where they referred to them, you know, they're often referred to as Spanish sheep as well. They were called Spanish sheep for some time. But also for that reason, it could be the possibility that they were descendants of the Moorish sheep that came from North Africa into Spain, into the British Isles. So that's one part of the history of where they're from. But what we do know, you know, a little later, as in today, what we do know is, you know, they were bred for, you know, maybe 350 years in Britain.
Yeah.
Over the years, they did do a little bit of crossbreeding and selective breeding to improve, particularly the meat. So they're a little bit larger than they are in, let's say, other parts of the world. They're a little, because they're meatier. So they did do a little selective breeding to improve the yarn, the fleece, and improve the meat. Now, they were first brought into North America, and we're going to get to what you mentioned about...
Do you have caffeine in your coffee?
The caffeine kicked in, folks. I thought about this when the show started, because you didn't ask me what I was drinking. And what I did do is I thought I would find a balance, because I did a half and half decaf and half regular coffee. Because on the one end, the one time I was like loopy, way after our taping of the show, and then the last episode I was doing this because I had a decaf coffee, if you remember. So I did a little bit of a half and half.
And you're half done now. So I think you drank, the first half you drank was the caffeinated part.
Probably. So now where was I? Okay, so we're talking about
you were talking about
the dual purpose sheep and the British, how they did do a little bit of the selective and crossbreeding, but they first came to North America. Oh, and I want to say in history as well, you mentioned how people have them as, you know, for entertainment purposes.
Yes.
Well, there was a period during in the British aristocracy and noblemen, they did keep them specifically for that reason, and they kept them, you know, on their country estates, and also in public parks. They would graze in public parks, and they were very much a visual thing because they look very exotic, like an exotic animal. They do. There's a name for it, and I didn't interpret the name of what they're called when they're multi-horned, but 2 to 4 horns. But I also read somewhere where they could have up to 6 horns. But the average is they have these 4 horns, which is very unusual, and the spottedness of them is unusual as well. So exactly. So black and white spots. They could be a little variation on the black to browns, but they're spotted. Yeah. And in pulling apart the fleece, they'll sometimes separate the 2 colors. I would imagine that in Britain, because you have these that were like an off-white cream colored, so they've probably bred out some of the spotting and have more of a cream colored natural sheep. But when they came to North America in the early 1900s to the US and Canada, they are now more, and they're a very rare breed. So they're still a very rare breed and noted as endangered in parts of the world like the US. Now those sheep though, they remain very like a historical breed, very much the same as they were, just continuously bred just within the flocks and different flocks, and very human intervention whatsoever. So they remain a lot of the characteristics of their natural wildness, and their physical characteristics still remain to this day. And it wasn't until, and the reason they brought them there as well, there was a period in the 60s and 70s that you could find them they were in zoos for a long time because of their exotic look as an exotic animal. So they were like a zoo animal. So after the 60s and 70s, a lot of the sheep breeders and farmers acquired some of these from the zoos, probably closing down or what have you, and they continued to breed. But globally, there are only, you know, fewer than 6,000, I think it is, globally of this breed. And in the United States, they did start a registry around 1985, and they continue to breed these sheep, and they are still somewhat of a rarity and a novelty. But again, their fleece is a very popular fleece with spinners, and their meat is a very popular good meat.
We were in a festival in, I think it was, I can't remember. It was somewhere in Ontario, and I think it was at Kawartha Festival, and there was a farmer there who had Jacob sheep, and he was from Pennsylvania.
I don't remember that.
He was from Pennsylvania, and he was asking me, what can I do with this? How do I market it? And his sister lived in Toronto, and she was a spinner.
Oh, okay. I do remember that.
And they were trying to figure out, what do I do with this? How do I market it? So... Yep. Well, there's a market. But it was nice. It was great to hear.
There's a market for all sheep, especially like somebody who wants an unusual wool and an unusual sheep, and there's a story behind it. Yep. Yeah, it's still. I mean, it's still a viable product in Britain and in the U.S. Yep. And that's Jacob sheep.
Excellent.
I don't think I forgot anything.
I don't think you did either. Everything. I was just wishing I had my knitting with me.
That was one of our shorter histories on sheep, believe it or not.
I think it's time to go to the kitchen, because I heard that you made something. We are filming today's episode on the May 24 weekend,
which is
Victoria Day.
And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Victoria Day because there's a bit of a history there. And
a little bit about Victoria Day.
This one is a little bit more intense because there's a history behind Queen Victoria, Victoria Day, and how it all came about.
How it all unfolds.
Exactly. And part of it, I'm going to wear this because I'll explain later. I'm going to wear this hat. Now, as you can see, there's a fleur-de-lis right here.
It's a New Orleans Saints hat.
Exactly not. You see, because at the back here, it has a little Quebecois flag. Now, do you know how many times it's just been my favorite baseball cap, and it's been a gift from this guy.
From this one.
From this one. And it's actually my Quebecois hat. So, but yeah, it's the same symbol of the Saints. Who are they? What are they again?
The New Orleans Saints. They actually play football.
Okay. So I've worn this hat at events, and a couple of guys will be like, oh, hey, too bad about the Saints, eh? Well, they didn't say A, I said A. But they were like, oh, that's so sad about the Saints. Too bad they're, out. And I'm like, huh? And I'm like, what? Yeah, what? And then they're like, well, the Saints, they got bumped. They're like, unfortunate. And then, so I'm like, well, no, it's my Quebec. It's just because when I'm doing these events, and I was oftentimes a information specialist, and it was to show that I was
an interpreter.
I was bilingual, so you could speak to me in French if you have any questions. And so I'm going to wear this to start off to talk about this show. This topic, I should say. It's not my show, it's the topic. Okay, Victoria Day. So, in history of Canada, there's been celebrations of the monarch for a couple of centuries, because Canada's not that old in particular.
No,
not very old at all. It's a very young country. But if we go back into let's say the 1700s, for example.
But is this celebrated all across Canada?
This is a national holiday that is celebrated by most Canadians across Canada, but some of the eastern provinces in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, it's not really noted as a national holiday where they get days off per se. But most of Canada celebrate Victoria Day. And it's gone through a few transitions, but it's always been the May 24th, which is Queen Victoria's birthday. So it always falls, you get the Monday off before May 25th. So anytime before May 25th, that Monday around the 24th is a national holiday for most of Canada.
Do you think if you asked most people under 50, is it what the day is this weekend? Would they say Victoria Day, or would they say May 24 weekend?
They say May 24. It's lost a little bit of its, the connotation and what it's really about. It's become, because it's called May 24, because a 24
is a case of beer. So you buy your case of beer, and then you go up to your cottage and party all weekend. Because that's the May 24 weekend. Because
Molson Canadian beer, which is traditionally Canadian, there's been commercials about it. Google I am Canadian, and it's about a beer mostly. Is it not Molson Canadian? I am Canadian, is a 2-4, because they come in a pack of 2-4. So the May 24th celebration of Queen Victoria's birthday has become the May 2-4, and it's just the beginning of the warm weather. We've had like balmy summer weather for the past week in the 80s, mid 80s. Yeah. For for us, it's in the mid 20s, or 20 to mid 20s, which is quite warm and hot for us for summer in Canada. And so people go to their cottages. It's time to go open up the cottages. There's picnics. It's probably one of the biggest, like, yay, it's spring, it's almost summer, and this is the May 24 weekend. But historically speaking, you have Queen Victoria. But prior to that, they did celebrate the King's birthday. And they'd acknowledged the king in celebrations, and it was mostly a military thing. So let's say in the 1700s, let's say, King Edward, Queen Victoria's father, for example, they would have military exercises, and then they would pretty much in every town, the military, which, at the time were British military, would then parade down to the local tavern, and they'd have a toast to the king, King Edward, during that time. And so this continued up until now. Queen Victoria, as we know, she was reigning. She took over the throne in 1837, I believe. Yes. So Just prior to that, though, during her time, there was Upper and Lower Canada. So Canada was divided in two provinces, the province of Upper Canada and Lower Canada. So now, Lower Canada would have been anything east along the St. Lawrence and was predominantly French, because all of the early settlers in France, being some of the first settlers in Quebec City and so forth, all along the St. Lawrence and making their way into Upper Canada. And Upper Canada is because on the western side, going west, you're actually going upstream. Upper Canada, upstream into the interior of Canada, which went west into the Great Lakes to Lake Superior. From Erie to Superior, Upper Canada. Lower Canada, going towards the mouth of the St. Lawrence, out into the open ocean. So that's Upper and Lower Canada. So you had all of the French, mostly French, along that area, and in Upper Canada, it would have been the British, the English, and they also followed a lot of the British rule of Parliament and British law, whereas the French Canadians and the French along there, they followed traditional, say, how do you say it, like Monsignor, seigneurial rule of law, which you know, the clergy and the noblemen owned the land. It was donated, it was given, it was awarded to the church, and they in turn then rented it out. Pretty much they gave it to the French to farm. And also they followed the Catholic Church. The French were very French, very Catholic, where the English were Protestant, and the Anglican Church ruled in that area. So in 1791, they had the British Constitutional Act, where they then took away a lot of the French tradition in the seigneurial, and it became more of like the British rule, but it still had the British own the land, the noblemen owned the land, and it was passed on. And because the Anglican Church was huge, there was favoritism. So a lot of these tracts of land were now given to the English, and the English owned the land, populated the land. As well, 1791, now this was just following the American Revolution as well. So during the American Revolution, you had the Empire Loyalists who were coming up from the South, who were loyal to the British Crown. Now they populated all that area from the Niagara Peninsula south, all along Lake Ontario, right up to over here, which we know Prince Edward County. Just down the road. Yep. Just down over here, we talk about Prince Edward County. And it was populated by the Empire Loyalists all along there.
And what did they bring?
And they also brought with them their own sheep. Yeah,
and so that helped populate. They brought the sheep up, and they brought different varieties of, or different breeds of sheep. So it helped give Upper Canada a greater diverse collection of sheep.
Yeah, and there's a whole history there as well. And so the Loyalists then, they also moved along up towards Kingston and along part of the St. Lawrence as well. So now you have a lot of the French are becoming a minority, because there was about an influx of about 10,000 immigrants, Americans, and British followers that settled in those areas.
Yeah.
And also with the act, that Constitutional Act, British Constitutional Act, the British still ruled. And then you want to put in there the War of 1812, only because now the British were the ones who protected the land, and the army were British, and they followed the British rule, and so you had an influx of British. And when we were able to keep the Americans at bay during the American invasions, and pretty much defeated that in the War of 1812 to retain Canada as a whole, a lot of British immigrants came during that time, and not so much the Americans, because they were then banned from traveling cross-border. So now you have this huge British influx.
And Victoria's not even born yet.
And Victoria's not, well, Victoria's probably, I don't know how old she would have been at that time. I only take into consideration, I don't know how old she was when she
No, but 18,
we're in 1791.
But then you're at the War of 1812. You just talked,
Yes. Oh, yes, the War of 1812. So we went from 1791 to the War of 1812, just to explain the dynamics between the French and the English, the British, and the British rule, and Parliament and all of that. So what happened after that, and this is why the French Canadians never lost their determination and their ongoing beliefs in the Catholic Church, the French language, and the culture, and all of that. And that's why I decided I would wear this hat.
Oh, well,
so
well, if you wear that hat, then I have to wear my hat. So I have a hat.
Okay, you're going to wear the Canada hat because
I'm going to wear the Canada hat.
We're going to talk about, okay, so this is what happens next, because what do you think happens there? You've got a whole group of French speaking and with their own culture and traditions. They're trying, the English are pretty much trying to assimilate the French into British culture. And they did rule, because if you go back just before that, there was the Battle of the Plains of Abraham between the British and the French, and the British won, and it was British rule ever since. So they were still able to continue with their traditions up until this constitutional act that divided Upper and Lower Canada, the French and... Are you Scottish?
I'm just laughing because every conversation we have, especially with you and my son, always goes back to the Plains of Abraham.
Oh, we've talked about that, but I'm just going to say that I'm going to talk a little bit more about this ongoing French-Canadian business. I'm just going to put on this little number because this is the Montreal Canadiens, which is not even the Canadiens, it's les Canadiens. They're known as les Canadiens de Montréal because that continued well into history, where they were just known as, les Canadiens, the Canadians, the French.
But you're not just wearing any...
No, there
Canadian
is a story
sweater.
Here. No, and I'm going to try to turn around if I can. Can we see this?
No.
Turn around. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So, it's Jacques Plante.
Jacques Plante.
And we've talked about Jacques Plante.
Yes, I have a whole episode on Jacques Plante.
There's a whole episode because there's a knitting connection with Jacques Plante, and he was French-Canadian. Plante, it's French. So, the French Canadians now, we're talking about Queen Victoria. Now, 37, she ascended to the throne. During that time, because there was a lot of discord between the French and the English still, this still continues to today. Well, there were rebellions. There were rebellions, and they were a very important period of history. In 1838, 37 and 38, the rebellions. And now they were called, considered the patriots, like French patriots, the patriotes. And so they were trying to fight for their freedom and their culture, and also a democratic government as opposed to just the ruling British. And also the indigenous factor is a big part of those rebellions, as we as Canadians know, myself knowing that, which would be with the Métis. And the Métis with Louis Riel, he's considered, at the time he was considered a traitor, and today considered a hero, because of he had a very, what do you say, like a futuristic look at democracy, and was fighting for democracy within Canada during the time. So it was a big deal. But those rebellions were quickly quashed by the British. And that was the end of the rebellion. Okay,
well, this isn't fair. You're sitting there with your...
At a crossroads about the rebellions between the French and the English.
So I'm going to wear... I've got a jersey as well.
And the indigenous rights, as we know, are a huge, huge factor in this day and age today, for many reasons. And my background being French-Canadian, there is a history of Métis in my family because...
Yes.
Okay.
I'm listening to you.
Okay, so I'm going to just continue wearing my French-Canadian Canadien jersey, as you're going to wear your...
Team Canada
jersey. So, the rebellions were quashed, and now what comes along...
Now we're at even.
We're pretty much even, but now what comes along is the Act of Union in 1841, and they unite the two Canadas. The two provinces become one province of Canada. Queen Victoria is the reigning monarch.
Oh, so now we're back. We're back to Queen Victoria.
Now, I was wondering
when we were getting back to.
Well, this is it, because now Queen Victoria is the ruling monarch in 1841. There's still a lot of discord. I mean, it's an ongoing thing, and it continued for many, many years afterwards. Yeah. But let's just move on to Victoria Day. So Victoria Day, so the ruling government now at the time thought, there sure is a lot of discord between these different cultures and language and religion and all of that. So they thought, let's celebrate this act of union. Let's have a celebration where it there's no divide between culture and religion. It's just a celebration of monarchy and this new union of Canada, but also celebrate Queen Victoria. But Queen Victoria and the monarch at the time, very few people know that she represented the minorities within the British dynasty, let's say, and in Canada in particular. She's a representative and a guarantor of minority rights in Canada. So they thought this would be a great way to celebrate, and both sides were in agreement, and they have this May 24th, Queen Victoria's birthday. Now that birthday and the celebrations continued afterwards, even after her death, it continued. But there were a few changes because even the following king, Queen Elizabeth's father, they didn't celebrate on his day. They still celebrated Victoria Day, and in general as, you know, the monarch's day sort of thing. And that's why there was a period of where it changed to May 24 weekend. In Ontario it was called Firecracker Day at some point, but they retained the Victoria Day name. And when Queen Elizabeth now came to the throne, 1952, they actually celebrated her birthday that year because she was the new queen. But then by 1953, it was still back to, like, Victoria Day was still celebrated as a national holiday and incorporates the Queen's birthday in general.
That's because the Queen's birthday didn't fall on a 2-4 or a 6-pack or a 12-pack.
Exactly.
If it was a 6, a 12, or a 2-4, then we probably would continue
Exactly.
That.
So they continued that, the history of Victoria Day and the celebration. But what's different, though, is in 1982, you had the new Constitutional Act in 1982 that was signed by Queen Elizabeth II and, who else? Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And for a lot of you who don't know or may know, outside of Canada, he is our current Prime Minister's father. Yeah. So Trudeau, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, signed this new Constitutional Act. And that act was to have complete Canadian independence, independent of British rule. Now, which means before this Constitutional Act, you still had to get permission, and it had to be granted by the monarchy and the British rule to change any act or laws within Canada. So now we're completely independent, but Queen Elizabeth remains still a very important figure and a much loved figure for some Canadians within Canada, as she is more of a, how do you say that? Just more of a figurehead, as opposed to Canada is now completely independent. But Quebec, this is where Quebec comes in. Quebec becomes more of, they were not in agreement with this new constitution because they, throughout the years, and you know, I jumped a big piece of history there, but throughout the years, they still...
It's only because of this that we only have an hour and
exactly.
a half.
But this is important because they didn't agree to the Constitution Act of 1982 because they claimed themselves as a distinct society, and they wanted a specific clause and specifically wanted to be known as this distinct society. So the French-Canadian Quebecers now, I just wanted to show you one thing.
What are you doing? I have no more props.
So all in all, one last note, only in Canada is Victoria Day and Queen Victoria's birthday celebrated as a national holiday outright.
And it all goes back to beer. I think the reason that we celebrate that is because it is 2-4 weekend and it aligns perfectly with our case of beer.
And also, they do raise the British Royal flag, the Union Jack, alongside the Canadian flag at government buildings and public buildings on the Victoria Day weekend. So everybody agrees and are happy when the long May 24 weekend comes around.
Everyone except for Zan, because it's fireworks going on, and the poor dog is terrified of the. I think he wouldn't leave our side last night.
Yes,
because we could hear them in the forest. We could still hear the fireworks going on.
We couldn't see them, but there was the boom, boom, bang, bang going on, and the poor little dog, he came and curled up on the couch because he was very frightened, and that happens when he hears fireworks. So he's. And there you have it.
And there you have it. That is Victoria Day, or
Journée des Patriotes.
Awesome. So what's coming up?
Finally,
I have to disclose something to you.
A disclosure.
A disclosure. I am two-timing. I'm starting another knit along.
What?
I'm two-timing with Aaron from Fiber Hustle.
From Fiber Hustle.
Yeah. He has started he will be starting knit along on June 1st. And the reason I got sucked into this is because I love watching Fiber Hustle. I was watching them talk. So it's Chip and Aaron.
Okay.
And Aaron was talking about how much he loved knitting a shawl, and it's a Stephen West shawl.
Wow.
And it is Vertex. It's a plural of vertex. So
a vortex?
No, vertices.
What is that?
It's so when you have 2 points or more than 2 points.
It's a knitting term?
It's a science term. But when you have more than 2 points connecting with one another, that is a vertex, or if you use the plural.
There's probably a French word for it, and that's why I don't know it. Yeah. Because I learned math and technical and science in French. So I've not heard this word.
So I'm going to be doing that June 1st. This is actually, I'm going to be doing 2 Stephen West this summer, but this is the first one. And Aaron was talking about what a great pattern it was. He's already knit it, and he said he would knit it again, and so he is starting to knit along. For those of you who are quilters, Chip is doing a quilt along. Could you imagine? I wonder how long that's going to be. That's going to be almost as long as your sweater knit along. It's going to be.
I haven't heard of these. I wasn't invited.
Well, you don't quilt, but anyways. I'm looking forward to participating in that. I think it's going to be great.
Sounds good.
We also have something else coming up.
What do we have coming up?
We have a festival, and this festival is marketed towards stores. So the stores are going to be coming to us, and we're going to be doing our pitch and talking about our offerings, and we will be going wholesale in some select stores. So that's exciting.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So we've got to do our pitch and put it out there and see if anybody's going to like us.
Yeah, so that'll be fun, and I'm looking forward to that. I think we're doing a YouTube clip for it as well. So you have to get into your best outfit for that.
Okay, is it a woolly outfit?
I don't know.
Well, we have to show samples of some sort, I guess. I don't have time to knit up a onesie.
And we have a giveaway. We didn't even talk about our giveaway.
Oh, that's right.
We have a giveaway. We are going to give away some yarn.
Okay. I forgot all about that. We didn't even mention it in the intro.
We didn't mention it. It's a secret. So the giveaway this time is partly to celebrate spring. I'm going to be dyeing this afternoon rhubarb and some other things, and so that is going to be the giveaway for the next episode. So it'll be a couple of skeins of yarn. And
then what do they need to do to be a part of this giveaway?
You have to answer a question, and the question is at the end of this episode. We are going to be showing a house of an animal. A structure. Yeah, sorry, a structure.
A thing.
In
the woods.
And you have to figure out what animal lives in there.
What it's called. What is it?
Basically
okay.
Well, it's in the title, though, if you guess what it is.
No, it can't be in the title, because they have to guess what they see at the end of the video and say that, and that. I guarantee that a lot of people will not know what this is at all. Well, Canadians would.
If you're in Canada, you'll know what it is.
Well, even some Canadians wouldn't have a clue. Well, and they wouldn't even know what it's called. That's a fact. That I know.
Okay, so we're saying that you have to have the correct terminology of what the structure is.
It's called something.
Okay, that sounds good.
It's not rhubarb.
Okay, but in the title is the name of the animal.
Well, we're not doing it. No, we're not.
Anyway, so that's so clear as mud. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give away some skeins that I'm going to be dyeing this afternoon. And we will announce it on the next episode. So please give us your answer in the show notes. No, in the comment section.
Gosh.
The comment section. I'm getting too excited because I'm talking about dying now. So, okay, so that's what it, so let's go over it again. Jamie, repeat what it is, repeat the contest.
When you see something at the end of the video, it's going to be in the middle of the woods, water, and you have to describe and name that structure, that thing that you see.
And then for all of those who get the question right, or the answer right.
We'll do as per usual. We'll enter the names into a draw. All of the ones that said it correctly what it is. But then today they just have to Google it. So we might get freaking hundreds. But either way,
and then we
try
will
to guess. Just try to do a random guess.
And then we'll randomly select the winner.
Yes.
That's it. So, is there anything else?
I don't know.
Well, we're going to be busy. Anyway, I'm just so glad that you were able to watch the show, and I hope you enjoyed it. The dog's making his rounds in the room now.
It's about time.
And I want to thank all of the subscribers for subscribing to our channel. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone who has made comments. I love reading your comments. I've been trying to get through all of them and provide a response. So keep them coming. Absolutely love it.
And I just want to say merci bien, merci beaucoup nos amis francophones pour vos participations et vos commentaires et juste pour être là avec nous. Merci.
Merci. Have a great week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you next time.
I have to remember not to do this because the camera will... I did that. So.
No,
Look at me.
Hello. Fuck. Pretty much. You're already encroaching on my side. Fuck. I'm right against... Look, I keep your elbow there. Keep that as a guide. Your elbow at the corner. And keep a space between us.
Ready?
Fuck.
I finished directing.